Why, hello there. I'm John Harvey, your host for Exam 1 Handing Back 2020, COVID style. Okay. Are y'all as exhausted as I am? This online grading stuff takes forever. I know this is just the day after you took the test, but man, I have not stopped. But I am done. I have uploaded all the exams that are graded along with your grades to the online thing already. I haven't hit publish yet. And so I will do that as soon as I get this done and processed, because I want you to receive all of this at once. I also didn't want to take up time in class tomorrow going over the test. Plus, I don't know, it's just kind of nice to have a permanent record where you could go back and look at this again, or if you know, I don't know, I just don't want to take up the time. I'd rather have a nice period of time when I know I can cover everything I want to cover, and I'm not worried about making sure I started the Zoom and stuff like that. So here we go. So this is common to both exams. So I'm going to tack this on to the beginning of both videos where I go over the test itself. And let me tell you here. Let's see. Actually, maybe I should pull the laptop, well, over here. Well, I can just tell you. All right. So here's how it works. When you upload the test, it assigns you a number. Let's see, in International Monetary, there are 31 students. It assigns you a number randomly from 1 to 31. And not 1 because you were first, because then that would also kind of give away whose test was whose. So it just randomizes it. So what I do then is, so all I know is user 1, user 2, user 3. I then download each one of those. So I had 29 to download for International Monetary, 20 for Containing Perspectives, and then I renamed them because it originally had the name you guys put on it. Every once in a while, somebody put their name within the title within their file name, and that's okay. I mean, you were making sure it didn't get lost, but I took it off. What I did was, if you were anonymous user number 5, I just renamed the file user 5. And so once I had all those files collected for each class, then I would get out my key, and of course I'm not going to go into great detail in this part of the video, but I would get out my key, look over the key, and before I start grading, I always like to read over several exams and get an idea of how everybody did on it, because I've got my idea how I'm going to grade it, but then I end up adjusting things, all right, as I find it. Well, I don't want to get halfway through the class and then realize I shouldn't have done it that way, so I like to read a whole bunch of them first. I actually do sometimes still end up with a problem if I've got to go back through and say, you know what, I shouldn't have been grading it that way. In fact, I believe in Containing Perspectives, I went back through ones I'd already graded and thought, I want to adjust that a little bit. Let's see, what else in general then that applies to both exams? Okay, so let me see here if you can. I'll double check my monitor and make sure you can see this properly. All right, so let's not forget how the grade's going to work out here. We got 9 times 5 for 45 for quizzes. All right, can you read that? Yeah, you can. 9 times 5 for 45 for quizzes. Then, let's see, 5 times 1 for 5 for reflections. Some people are not doing the reflections. For crying out loud, it's a free point, and you can put in there, screw you, Harvey, and you get the free point. Anyway, and it's always the people who need the free points who aren't getting the free points. All right, and then we've got, let's see, 3 exams. Well, 2 of them are 15 points, and then the final is 20 points. I believe this is right. We'll find out in just a second, won't we? Yeah, that's right. 30, 20, so that's going to be exam 1, exam 2, exam 3. And adds up to 100. Yay! So, let me remind you something I assume I said in one of the initial videos. I can't even remember anymore because this entire 9 months is a blur. And that is that my thinking was, hey, let's circle these in order of difficulty, all right? That's free. I don't know how well you can see that. I may zoom this in a little bit just to make sure. Okay. You're probably thinking, yeah, that was a real little bit, Harvey. Come on. 5 absolutely free points. I'm going to circle that in green. Then, in a lovely horned frog purple, 45 points that I'm figuring relatively easier points. All right, you've got if you've sat down and written out your what do you call it, outline, and you've got your book and so forth there. Now, if you decided not to read the chapter until you took the quiz, then it's not an easy 45 points. But and I don't want to say easy. This is incredibly easy. I'm figuring you can the average student's going to get maybe an 80 in that right there. Okay. We started off a little slow in containing perspectives, but people are picking up on it now. Then these down here are meant to be the more challenging parts. As I said to you before the exam came up, I said, this is just testing to make sure you read stuff, make sure you read through the chapter, right? This is to make sure you understood it. So I always intended this to be somewhat more difficult, all right? That this is somewhat more challenging. I preface all this with that because on average the grades were relatively low. I raised them in both classes so that they are now equal to or higher than the average grade on the regular exam 1 that took place this time last year, on the regular exam 1. And bear in mind, in a normal semester, the way I do this is I have the exam broken up into parts that are just word for word off the study questions and parts that are hellish, all right, which is a bit more like these things here. These are the hellish parts. I therefore raised the grades on exam 1 to an average that was really relatively high, given that they had questions that they should have gotten easily. In other words, I'm sort of combining, on the regular semester, I sort of combine the hey, did you read it, and hey, did you understand it on a single exam. And I pulled these up to the average of an exam that actually included 80% of which was, hey, did you read it? All right, so hopefully that'll help out a lot. Yeah, so I think I need to go into the details on each one of those now. But again, I remind you this, I still have no idea how anybody did. I still don't know because all I know is this. I've written down over here for International Monetary, those are the people who took the exam as number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. That's all I know. Again, I'm not going to post those until I get done with this. I mean, by the time you see this, they will be posted, but nevertheless. And I did see a couple of names because, as I said, people had, when I was putting the grades in before I could see the names, sometimes somebody had renamed their file with their, like, Harvey, exam 1. So, okay, well, I know this is Harvey's. I didn't know it was Harvey's when I graded it. But I know it's Harvey's now that I am uploading the graded document or the graded exam and putting the grade in. I know it's Harvey's now. And I know already there's going to be some people that are used to doing better that didn't do as well. So we'll see how this all works out. Also, let me remind you of my promise made during the summer. At the end of the semester, if the grades are out of line in a negative way, with how the grades usually are in this class, I'm moving them up, all right? Because any errors that I make in this new course design will be in your favor and not against you, all right? Now, that still means it's about 1 out of every 5 people in a normal semester for me, and that doesn't count the people who drop, of course. The people who drop generally would have done even better. But out of that, but I will make sure that this is not more challenging than it was, at final count than a regular semester. And wait a minute, that reminded me of something else. What was it? Or am I ready to cut this off and then start doing the individual exams? Okay, next quiz is, the quizzes are going to be on Thursday for the next 3 for the next 3 quizzes, they'll be on Thursdays, but I'll show you that in class. Let's see, is that everything? Yeah, I think so. All right, so that's the next door neighbor's dog growling. I thought perhaps my stomach was growling because I am very hungry right now, but it's the dog. So now I'm going to stop this and I'm going to merge this into the other 2 class files, the videos. Now I'm going to go over each class individually. Thank you. All right. International Monetary Economics Exam 1 Review. Let's see, it's the last one I got to do. Then I've got to convert them all to the format for YouTube, then combine them, then upload them, and then put your grades up, and then do like 10 other things. But that's all right. That's what I'm getting paid for. All right. Let's see here. I began my review of... I left one of my lights off. I began my review of the Contending Perspectives exam by going over the grades in general. So I think I'll do that same thing right now. But not for their class, for our class. There's something hanging off my hat. It's a lovely hat, isn't it? TCU Economics. We had these made up for a senior banquet a couple of years ago. I don't know if there's any left or not, but it's a collector's item now. All right, let's see. I'm having a difficult time now remembering what I did in my little introductory video that I was going to do for both classes, that little introductory segment that you just watched. I went over how it was anonymized and so forth. I haven't uploaded them yet. I don't know how anybody did. The only people I know how they did is people who had changed the name of their file so that I saw their name as I was uploading the grade, or uploading the item. But and there are going to be some people who are disappointed. But I went over all that. All right, so let me show you the grades on this exam. Let's see. So it's going to be fall. Okay, A, B, C, D, F, and average. Fall 2020, fall 2019. Did you know in that class we actually sat in the same room together? It was incredible. And fall 2020, oops, I put fall 200. 2020 plus, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. Okay, so what did you all get when I first went through and graded? 0 A's, 4 B's, 4 C's, 8 D's, and 13 F's, with an average score of 62.5%. So I thought that was kind of low. And so what I did was I compared it to what the average grade was last year on exam 1. And last year, so in order to get an idea, I was going to move it some. And you remember, and as I've already mentioned in the introductory part of the video, I am going to make sure that the grades are not worse than they were in a normal semester. But I don't know how to accomplish that during the semester with assignments that are of different levels of difficulty. Do I make every single assignment match that final, pattern? That's not the way it was even in a regular semester. So, but I did decide on this. Well, now hang on. Let's compare it to something comparable and look at exam 1 last year. Now, yeah, all right, shut up, John. Let's see. So I've got last year 74525. 74525. Okay, so those were the numbers of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, and so forth last year. And as you can see, F was a mighty, popular score, in part because people are never quite sure how the exams are going to work, which is a little strange because I say exactly how they're going to work. Not this semester. This semester was weird, but in a regular semester. But nevertheless, whatever. Now let's see. Do I want to put the percentages over there? I guess I'll jot that down real quick. All right, so this was, let's see, I'm just going to do this from off the top of my head. I believe that's 0%, 14%, 14%, so I bet that's 28, yeah. 28% and 45%. So to get a better idea of how this compares, this is 30%, 17%. So we got 30%, 17%, 21, 9, and 22. 21, 9. I don't know if you can read those small numbers or not. Actually, it's relatively clear, as long as I don't lean forward and make the camera focus way up here somewhere. All right, so, I'm sorry, and what was the average score? 75%. So I figured, well, that's not going to work. I'd like to, I went through like several ways of doing this. You know what turned out to be the easiest? Hey, that turns out to be just adding 12.5% to everybody's grade. So actually what I did do was not 12.5%, was actually a little bit more than that. Let me look at my calculator real quick. Okay, calculator. There's one. All right. Clear 2 divided by 15. I actually added 13%. All right, so I added 13%. So the average this year was actually going to be 75.8. All right, so I altered the grades to where the average is now marginally higher than it was on the actual exam last year. And I got to tell you, this was supposed to be a more difficult assignment. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lower grade, but I'm trying to err on the side of caution, and so I bumped up everybody's grade by 2 out of 15 points. Right. So what does that do? What does that do after I do that little conversion? Now we've got, pardon me, 575. 575. Still got a lot of D's. 10 and 2. But let's see, and I didn't bother to calculate the percentages. But you can see it's obviously, well, actually I could kind of interpolate here. That must be 7. And so if that's 8, that must be, so each percentage point turns out to be about 4 into 14. Hell, I gotta know now. Hang on. Now I'm curious about it. Oh no, I'm sorry. I was thinking that the class was out of 15 rather than the exam. What have we got? We got 29, 8. Yeah, we got 29. All right. So 5 divided by 29. 17. That must be, 34%. And so half of that's going to be about 7%. Only one I don't know now is 7. 7 divided by, 29, that's right. About 24. Okay. So what we ended up with this semester then was many fewer F's. Overrepresented on the D's, I'm afraid. Fewer C's, quite a bit more B's, and about half as many A's, percentage-wise. So that's where we stand right now. Okay, so how did I grade this? Man, I am so tired. Let's see. All right, so I guess we go through the exam now. So, I'm sorry, I should stop and point this out then. So, when you check, and I presumably I will have mailed this to you, or you would have received notification that your stuff's graded by the time you see this, because I've still got. I'm not gonna hit the publish button until these videos are done and uploaded, so you can watch them. But what you will see is that whatever grade you earned on the exam, the grade I entered, because you'll see both of those. You'll see the grade that I entered, and then you'll see the grade typed out on your exam. Whatever I entered is going to be 2 points, not 2 percentage points, 2 out of 15 higher than what's on your exam. So if on your exam you had earned a 10 out of 15, I actually input a 12 out of 15. All right. So, but you'll see that. But just to let you know where that came from, that was from me doing this adjustment way over there on the right. You know what my first ever college exam grade was? 33%. It was a C, honors physics, all right? But I was a physics major at the time. I did not stay a physics major. Okay, the exam. Yeah, and then there's my, okay. All right, this was my first problem. This one really caused me some consternation, and I worked a long time on trying to decide how to address this. Let me show you the question again, which of course you have because you still have the exam. Harvey argues that the psychological characteristics of currency market participants contribute to exchange rate volatility. He lists the responsible factors as: I know for a fact that Harvey already took exchange rate volatility as a given. He didn't study the psychological factors first and then say, hey, I'll bet that causes volatility. Let's see if Harvey is full of it. Sorry about that. List each of the 7 factors, which I've already done for you. Each of the 7 factors, and consider the extent to which each really supports the idea that agents' behavior creates market volatility. One way of doing this is to see if you can us it to make the opposite argument. Can you, for example, use uncertainty to support the idea that currency markets tend to be stable? Your explanations don't have to be long, but they should be clear. I have about 2 or 3 sentences on each one. All right. This was the problem. Only about a third of the class actually did what the question asked. And that was, I don't want to know on uncertainty what the original question said. In fact, let me go, or what it said in the book about this, or what it said in my lecture. In fact, I've got that right here. Here's me pulling it straight out of the book on how uncertainty contributes to volatility. Uncertainty means that as events emerge, so agents lacking the whole picture are likely to overreact. Some people put that down as their answer. I know it says that. I'm asking you, does that make sense? I'm asking you to analyze it. I'm saying here, consider the extent to which uncertainty, in this case, really supports the idea that agents' behavior creates market volatility. Okay, I know what Harvey said, and you know what Harvey said. I'm asking you, does that make sense? And in fact, only a very few people took this advice here. Can you, for example, use uncertainty as defined by Keynes to support the idea that currency markets would tend to be stable? Why not try thinking through the opposite and see if you can think of a way. Well, let's see. Is uncertainty bound to cause volatility, or is there a way uncertainty could actually contribute to stability? Or other people just give me the definition of uncertainty. Because in general our knowledge of the future is vague and scanty, the information of which we are aware plays a disproportionate role in our forecasts. Okay, but does that support the idea of volatility? The whole point of this question was to analyze, and I kept reading back through my question. I was like, well, that's what it says. I mean, it was an open book exam too, open notes. So I was like, well, I know you can just copy it down out of the book. And remember what I had said about the exams versus the quizzes. This is to test your understanding, not to see if you read it. Well, if I just get back what I already wrote in the book, well, I just know you read it. I don't know that you understood it. So again, that was about 2/3 of the class. Basically just gave me back what I already knew. But the other third did what the directions asked. All right, they went in and tried to analyze it. Let's see, any other general statement I want to make before that? I went through a number of, I read a whole bunch of the answers before I settled on how I was going to grade it. I actually had written out how I was going to grade it on the top of my key here before I got started. And then I amended it, and then I amended it again to try to come up with, how am I going to grade people that didn't do what the question asked? That's what was my struggle, or Mein Kampf, if you will. Little German humor there. or actually Nazi humor, if you will. That was my struggle. And I came up with this, all right? I came up with this solution. I kept bothering poor Melanie, who was also in the middle of doing all this online teaching stuff. Like, Mel, what should I do about this? Mel, what should I do? Because, and then I made up a rubric, and she was like, that's great. Okay, so here's how I ended up grading this one. Let's see. Now, I believe I mentioned in the introductory video that I've already lost what I was going to say. I'm telling you, I'm worn out right now. Let's see. I already told you in the introductory video. I don't remember. Okay, what have I got up here? Okay. All right, so here's how I ended up doing. Ow, son of a gun! I just put the chair down on top of my foot. All right. This is how I ended up grading it. There's the basic concept, like uncertainty. All right. And clearly, you need to understand the concept of uncertainty to answer the question. And you don't have to give me the definition. In fact, giving me the definition doesn't necessarily trigger that you understand it. I just mean in your discussion, in your use of the concept in analyzing whether or not it really does support volatility, did you demonstrate a clear understanding of the subject? Is either solid or less than solid. There's only one point to divvy up here anyway, so I couldn't have too many categories. A solid understanding or less than solid. Okay, now how about your analysis of whether or not it really contributes to volatility? Was it pretty darn good or it's all right? And this is what I decided on. Obviously, your -0 is going to be a solid understanding of the basic concept and a good analysis of of whether or not it contributes to volatility, or it could actually be used to explain stability. Then, yeah. Now, you may wonder, how could someone have a less than solid basic concept but do a good analysis? It did happen a couple of times. The analysis was right on, but they might have said something in their description that's not quite right. That's not exactly right about the basic concept. But when you got around to the part where you said whether or not it supported the idea of volatility versus stability, actually you did that pretty well. All right. So now, what grade do I give to somebody who demonstrates a solid understanding and good versus you said something in the middle of all that just didn't make any sense? Do I take off for that? And the answer is, well, actually it depends. It depends on how big it was, right? If it was a little tiny thing, I kept you up here. But if it was like, I don't know that I can in good conscience let that go and say this is as good an answer as this was on somebody else's test. Now, this was probably the most common. Okay, I'm going to believe you understood the basic concept. But you never did do what the question asked, all right? You never did really go in and say, and analyze the situation to decide whether or not this unequivocally supports the idea of volatility, or one could make the argument that actually it could contribute to stability. And then, of course, and if you get a -1 if it really sucked, all right? If it's like, there's not much I can give you here. I'm not sure you've even been in our class. I don't know that I ever took off one. Maybe once or twice, but for the most part I didn't. So this was the most common. And so let's go through them, all right? Now let's see. There's a couple more general comments I want to make here that struck me as I was reading through these answers, and they're about this whole approach. I ran across a number of times people referring to rational decision-making versus irrational decision-making, and kind of characterizing what we're talking about as irrational. And that's not what we're really saying, all right? Particularly with respect to uncertainty. Irrational. Hey, where is that? Here it is. All right. Here's 2 6-sided dice. The most common outcome of a roll of 2 6-sided dice is a 7. If you're going to roll 2 6-sided dice and you ask me to bet on what I'm going to roll or what you're going to roll, if I don't guess 7, I'm irrational. I have all the information necessary to make this forecast. It is well established what the average outcome is going to be. So if I don't say 7, I'm being irrational, right? But if you're telling me that you picked 2 dice out of here at random, and I've got, let's see here, there's a 20-sided die, there's another 20-sided, here's a 12-sided, and you're going to roll them both, I'm going to be like, I don't have enough information. I don't have enough information to make a rational choice. It simply doesn't exist. It's not there. There is no possibility of a rational choice by that definition of we have all the background information and you can create expected value calculations and it should always be a 7. The problem that Keynes is describing and that we're coming from in this class is that's never true. That's never true in the real world. We never have sufficient information. So when you say that someone decided that the dollar was going to appreciate by, 2 cents over the pound, are they being rational or irrational, or are those concepts that really aren't very useful in this context? Because we can't come up with a forecasting technique that we could define as rational in the same sense that we could rolling 2 dice. And that's what neoclassicism does, is they lean towards the whole 2 dice thing. They view remember this from one of the chapters, they view the agents making the forecast as being completely independent of the process creating the outcome. And I could tell on a number of people's exams, they were thinking of it exactly that way. They were thinking of the currency market as this process, and the forecast being me guessing what the dice roll was going to be. That's not the way it works in the financial market. Our collective expectation creates the outcome, and there is no separate process that the rational person focuses on, but the irrational person ignores. There is no separate process. There is no known process. There is insufficient information. So, don't use rational versus irrational at all in the context of what we're discussing in this class. It's creating an analogy that is totally inappropriate. And I would argue, and that's what neoclassical economics, one of the things they do wrong in exchange rate research, is they do treat it as if there's the process out here and me making the forecast over here, and that's why they totally miss the real important factors. All right, so that was one thing that really struck me on a couple of people's exams. Please don't use rational versus irrational, because it is drawing on concepts that are not analogous in a financial market. They don't fit. They don't fit. Also, there were people talking about the right exchange rate. They didn't guess the right exchange rate. That's like rolling the dice again. That's the same problem. There is no right exchange rate. There's just whatever we got. There is no, it is, now, you might not be gifted at guessing what all the other people in the market guessed, all right? But when we're talking about the aggregate set of expectations, the aggregate set are always exactly correct. Because in aggregate, if we believe that the dollar is going to appreciate versus the euro, it's going to appreciate versus the euro because we're going to enter the market and buy the dollar, all right? Let's see. Or someone mentioned the true value of a currency. What is that? What is the true value? I don't know that this is a useful concept. And this is the kind of thing that I struggled with when I was first trying to figure out what I didn't like about this set of exchange rate theories and why I developed a different set. As a true value, why does that even help us? That once again implies that there is this separate process out there that is determining the exchange rate separate from the agents forming their forecasts, when in fact, the agents forming their forecast is the process that's creating the outcome. So there is no true outcome as compared to the market in general. And the last thing I want to say on that is a couple of people talking about the natural exchange rate. This was really on the second one here. And did I make a note on that? I don't think I did. No, I never did. But the exchange rate that exists without the government intervention. And I really kind of push back against that too. We made up the market. The market is a set of laws and expectations. And so is the government. And so I really push against characterizing the market as somehow natural, because it ends up biasing the way we view how we do our research. All right? It is Homo sapien behavior. All right, and in a context that we have created and which has evolved over the last 200 or 300 years. All right, so kind of background stuff there that I wanted to make sure I mentioned because it worried me that people coming off from this trajectory, the idea that there's this natural exchange rate out there or this rational, no, get rid of that because you're not going to follow the rest of the course. I mean, that's not what it was saying. In fact, there was a quiz question on this about how this approach in this book differs is that the forecast is creating the outcome. All right, shut up, John. Uncertainty. Again, we don't need the definition. I read it to you a minute ago, or how it affects. I don't want to just see all over again. Actually, let me read it to you. I don't want to see all over again, as I did a number of times. As events emerge, so agents lacking the whole picture are likely to overreact. That could certainly be part of your answer, all right? But then you kind of like say, okay, well, let's think about that. Is there any way that could actually create stability instead? And as soon as you said that, man, you were pushing your way from down here to in this column. As soon as you tried to address what the question was really asking about, now you've pushed yourself over from the minus 0.5, minus 0.75 column to the minus 0, minus 0.25 column. Hell, there were people I ended up saying, you know what? That's not really right. Minus 0. Because you tried. You actually did something that most people in the class didn't do, and that was actually follow the directions of the question. And I was like, I just wanted to see you try to work it out. I didn't care if you came to the same conclusion I did. A lot of people did. But I really wanted to see you attempt to not just take it as given, but push back, all right, and say, wait a minute, is that right? Does it have to work that way? And on uncertainty, okay, so here's an example. On uncertainty, I had people mention, and this is what I've always said on this one, and a number of people mentioned this. This was, again, maybe about a third of the class consistently approach the question appropriately. Sometimes some people did one part and one people didn't, kind of stopped doing it in another part. And I was like, oh man, you were going all right. You were doing the right thing and then you stopped. All right. Anyway, if all this uncertainty where you don't have this background information and you have to here's another thing. You have to take the item as given. All right. Given uncertainty, could this create stability? And your answer can't be, well, it could create stability if we took uncertainty away. Well, okay, but given uncertainty, can we have stability? And a number of people said, well, if there's all this uncertainty, maybe you don't want to trade at all. Maybe you want to pull out of the market, and if there's no trades, then there's no price changes. And I'm like, okay, all right. So you were able to use uncertainty to come up with an argument that actually under some circumstances I can see where this high level of uncertainty might actually cause some stability, where agents are not stepping in and acting because they have this low level of confidence created by the uncertainty. All right, availability. there were some misunderstandings of what it meant, which put people down on this column down here, or I should say this row down here. And there were some minor misunderstandings I didn't take anything off for. Yeah, I have here that overweighting dramatic events can cause a problem. All right, so there's no question that there are circumstances under which availability could cause a problem. But recent events need not create volatility if recently the market's been very calm. If what's available in memory is a very calm market, and a couple of people said that. I said, okay, that's great. Hence, availability may exacerbate volatility, but it doesn't necessarily cause it. It could work against it, so something like that. So, but some attempt, and if you said, but I don't think that's right. I think it's just going to be volatile. Okay, but at least try to analyze the item and determine whether or not you think it could possibly cause stability. Representativeness. A number of people said that this expectation of returning, what's that called? Where it goes back to its mean, reversion to the mean. That caused all kinds of volatility. Well, why would it do that? I mean, if we're all expecting it to return to some value here, wouldn't we then tend to move towards that value so that we create a more stable outcome? If we didn't expect reversion towards the mean, then we're expecting it to go all over the place. But if we expect reversion towards the mean, then we have some stable anchor in mind, which obviously also implies another one. So again, I don't remember what people said on that one. I think I was grading this one about 11 o'clock last night. And on my own answer, this is what I had written out. People being willing to make forecasts based on scant information is problematic. That would tend to create volatility because you're very willing to enter into the market on very little information. And prices don't move unless somebody buys or sells, all right? However, the general outcome must resemble the process doesn't appear to be especially supportive of either extreme, all right? If you believe the process is a stable one, then you're going to forecast a stable outcome. And I said, I suppose one could argue that if they thought the process created calm, then they could interpret all the inputs as, but I said it was a little, my own answer was, I think that's a little thin. I didn't think it was very likely. But at least John Harvey said it. All right, anchoring. That one already had included originally the possibility that it could create stability or instability. So that one I was hoping would be fairly easy because it already included both. They said, well, it already says that if in calm markets it tends to create calm, and there were several answers like that. Now, at that point, okay, so a number of people took a beating on A, B, and C. I really eased up on D, E, and F. Oh, and by the way, and I forgot to say this in Contending Perspectives, I graded everybody's question 1 first, then I graded everybody's question 2. So I was going through these. I pulled up like 5 of them at a time, had the 60-inch TV back there, checking them all out. The stupid dog wanting to play constantly. If you could see this room here, these are all the things he had destroyed while I was trying to distract him. So I tried to ease up on D, E, and F. And D, as I said, oftentimes, well, geez, it already included the thing about stability. Quick results, it's kind of hard to imagine quick results creating calm. And as I say here, this one implies a lot of market activity and following of potentially very short-term trends. It's hard to make it support the idea of calm, since it creates a vision of people pursuing every new piece of information. So you don't have to come up with, oh yeah, it does, but I wanted to see you think about it. I wanted to see you address the question of, does this one support it pretty well as well? And if you disagree, that's fine. However, don't disagree by saying, but if they didn't have a desire for quick results, it's like, well, yeah, but I mean, this is about evaluating desire for quick results. So be sure you're talking about that specific. Animal spirits, I have here, again, it's hard to imagine a spontaneous urge to action as being something that contributes to calm. It implies impulsivity, which does not create calm. All right, so I mean, you could say it did, as long as you didn't say, but what if we didn't have animal spirits? There was one I liked. I can't remember what it was now, but I was like, oh, there was actually one that talked about the wrong subject, really, in some respects. But I was like, but okay, you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to figure out how it would create calm. And then the last one, the convention, I think you can make a pretty easy case for stability there, because remember, what it's saying is that to ease our minds, we operate on the assumption that the price that prevailed, say, in the morning when we got up, that it's right. It's the right price given all the background information, which can't possibly be true, but it's the right price. Why would that not create stability? Why would that not create, okay, that's the right price? If you woke up in the morning every day and said, that's the wrong price, I got to trade, well, then it would be, more instability. That's the kind of thing I was looking for on that one. All right, so that was question one. Now, question two. Man, I revised the hell out of this a couple of days before the test. And I was really hoping that this would provide some easy points here. It did. A couple of people got perfect score on it. And it did in some cases. But the part I thought was going to be really easy, I think most people missed. And when I show you the answer, you're going to say to yourself, why the hell didn't I say that? That's the way I always felt in intermediate micro. I got an A in intermediate micro. But when I get something wrong, and Dr. Chang, he was a really nice man, he would show it on the board. I was like, why the hell didn't I say that? That all makes so much sense now. Anyway, that's not an uncommon feeling for an economics major. I guess I'm going to try to recreate the graph real quick. But one of our challenges this semester is the fact that it's really hard to ask you to turn in a graph. All right, I think I'm going to extend the axis back this way a little bit. To turn in a graph on an exam. We've talked about it several times in faculty meetings, and well, you have people take a picture of it and so forth. Now I'm asking you to have access to a lot of technology and some ability to use it, and I don't want to do that. So what I opted for at the end of last semester and what I opted for here on this exam was to make you answer a question based on a graph, but never actually have to show the graph. And it wasn't until the last minute that I hit on the idea, hey, wait a minute, I ought to be putting some numbers on there. That way they can just tell me the numbers, and then I can see if they figured it out right. Okay, let's see. I had this in blue. I'll try to make it consistent. There's exchange rate A. Then I'm going to go ahead and write exchange rate B here. And the idea here was that we're going to introduce some government intervention in this market. And so what kind of impact does that have? And there were two tricky things, and I was hoping that the rest would be not too bad. All right, first of all, let's go ahead and fill this in up here. If you've got quantity, it's not euros, by the way, that's pounds. But anyway, that doesn't matter. People called it euros. There's quantity of pounds down there, so it must be dollars per pound up here. So this is going to be demand for dollars, U.S. exports, demand for pounds, U.S. imports. I made you fill all this in because I figured, well, A, you could just look it up because it's an open book exam, but B, I wanted you to know it. XUS plus KI-US, and D for pounds, MUS plus KO-US. Okay, there's exchange rate B, and then I had this red line here for where the government was holding the exchange rate. The government has intervened, and they are buying one of the two currencies. I'm trying to decide if I should zoom in on that a little bit. I can zoom in a little bit. I don't want to zoom in too much more. Let me look at the monitor again. Yeah, it'll work. All right. So now let me drop these numbers down here. And some of the numbers you weren't going to use, you know how this kind of thing works. 3. I actually got out a ruler, and these were the millimeters or the centimeters. I laid it on my computer screen to kind of get an idea of where the to make it somewhat what's the word I want here Oh, the scale make it right. I'm sorry, my brain's not working. $12. All right, then. Oh no, that's right. 26. Oops. 29. And 36. Okay. I really like this question a lot. I will continue using this one in the future. Oh, speaking of which, I want to remember to say this. Somebody may ask me at some point here, could you post the key? And I can't. The reason is that these questions take hours to write. And I've only got a limited number of them. I try to come up with new ones. This was brand new. I'd never asked this before. But if I post the key, then somebody's going to download it and it's going to be on the internet somewhere, and then the lazy cheating bastards in class will just use that to do the exam. And I can't, I don't want that to happen. Now, you could certainly make a key out of this, out of everything I've said here so far, but the thing is that only the really good students would do that, and the really good students aren't going to upload it somewhere. The bad students are not going to bother, and so it's not going to happen. Yes! Right. Not that there's any bad students, because we weeded you out a long time ago before you get to econ. Now, just like physics did to me. Let's see here. First question. All right. Which currency is being purchased by the government? Now, I was hoping this was a giveaway right here. And how can you tell? And a couple of people got it right, but a lot of people didn't. All right. So, if the government had not intervened, the exchange rate would have been here, right? That's where it would have been without government intervention. But the government did intervene, so it's here. So notice this is a much cheaper pound. It's a much cheaper pound. This is measuring the value of the pound. How many dollars are you going to give up per pound? It's a much cheaper pound, therefore a much more valuable dollar than would have happened had the government not intervened. How do you make something more valuable? You buy it. So they're buying dollars, right? They're buying dollars. How can I tell? Because the price of the dollar at C is much higher than it would have been at B had the government not intervened. So they're buying dollars, and I'm afraid most people said buying pounds. And what a couple people said was, well, because they're in the denominator. Well, that doesn't make any difference. I mean, you're obviously buying dollars and pounds in a currency market. Some people are buying the dollar, some people are buying the pound. So, no, this was worth 1 point. Yeah, 1 point. And I tried to ease up on this question. I never took off all the points unless you left it blank. So if you got this one totally wrong, you know, which currency are they buying? I took off 0.75. Sometimes people would say they're buying the dollar because my Uncle Bob said so. It's like, okay, well, you're right about the dollar, but you're not right about why, okay? So, and technically, I originally had set up to where 0.25 of the one was on they're buying the dollar, and 0.75 was on, and this is how I know. All right. So that's the first part. Now, and again, dang it, but luckily, if you got that wrong, that didn't necessarily throw you off on all the following questions. That would have really sucked. So there were people who got that part A wrong, but then nailed the rest of it. All right, so that was really lucky. Part B, given the government intervention. Okay, what does that mean? I use line C. Given the government intervention, does the U.S. have a trade surplus or a trade deficit? Well, let's find out. All right, so at C, here's our exports. It hits the line there at 3. There's our exports, and here's our imports. So, the U.S. has a trade deficit, which almost everybody got right. The U.S. has a trade deficit. That was worth 1/4 of a point. This is a 1.5 point answer. That was worth 1/4 of a point deficit. Then the next part was, how big is it? It says here, how did you determine that, and what size is it? What size is it was worth 0.5. How did you determine that was worth 0.75? Many good answers on this one, I'm pleased to say. Varying from, I can see on the D for pounds, curve, whatever. Or you could simply say, well, I can tell that U.S. imports are 12 and U.S. exports are 3. Well, there's only one way you could have come up with that. So I didn't make you explain more than that. It's like, okay. So we have a trade deficit of 9. That's right. We have imports of 12, exports of 3, trade deficit of 9. Yes! Now, this was a tricky question. This next part, I was hoping everybody's going to nail A and B, all right? C I knew was hard. And C says, given the effect of government intervention, and as soon as it says that in the sentence, it means use line C, does the U.S. have a capital account surplus or deficit? And a couple of people said, well, they've got a surplus. Because if they've got a deficit on the current account of 9, they must have a surplus on the capital account of 9. That's not right, right? That would only be true if the government were not intervening. And a couple of people did a beautiful job on this. They went through and did the calculation. Okay, there's a couple of ways to work this out, but let me do it this way for you. The U.S. has a capital account deficit, actually, all right? How do we tell? Let's see. I'm going to use purple. How do we tell that the U.S. has a capital account deficit? Okay, let's do this. All right, there's the gap between the two positively sloped lines, right? And what is that gap? 26 minus 3. Oops, is that right? Yeah, 23. Is that what I got? Yeah, 26 minus 3. So U.S. capital inflows are 23. It's the gap between the two positively sloped lines. How do I know that? It's 26 minus 3. It's the gap, right? And there were people that did exactly that. Showed me a 26 minus 3, it's going to be 23. All right. What is the U.S. capital outflows? It's going to start to get a little bit messy, but hey, that's life, right? All right, that's that gap right there. It's the two negatively sloped lines, right? So what have I got there? I've got 36 minus 12. So, aha, mon Dieu! U.S. capital inflows are 23. U.S. capital outflows are 24. We've got a capital account deficit. We've got a capital account deficit and a trade deficit at the same time. And that is absolutely possible if we also include government intervention. And that's what I was trying to get you to figure out here. Do you understand this graph so well that you can not only get A and B right, which I was hoping to be fairly easy, but you can also figure out C. And again, wonderful. A number of people got that exactly. That was a tricky one. That was very good, very good. And then I was hoping some more giveaway points on D and E, all right? And on this one, by the way, it was a quarter of a point to say the U.S. had a capital account deficit, a half a point to say it was a deficit of 1, and 0.75 points to explain how you figured it out, all right? Now, let's see here. D and E. I said, okay, what if there had been no government intervention? So now we're back up to here. What if there had been no government intervention? Then would the U.S. have had a trade surplus or a trade deficit? And let's see, that's going to be, I think I'll use green and red for this. I got to remember my pens tomorrow because I've got them all spread out here. Let's see, imports, right there. I'm going to draw it up here. 8. Okay, the imports are 8 on B, and the exports are 6. So we're going to trade deficit of 2. All right. And many very good answers on that. And again, that's what I was hoping. I was hoping that this would be fairly free points. Now, what about the capital account? All right, let's find out. Let's see. Let's do the capital outflows first. What's the gap here? Let's see. We've got 6 from 29, right? Is that right, John? Let me double check my calculations. Yeah, that's right. 23. So there's the capital outflows. Now here's the capital inflows. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not right, is it? No, that's my capital inflows. Crap. I guess I'll erase it. But I want, it doesn't matter. It's capital inflows, but I wanted it to be green. Dang it. just because it was money coming in. All right. So it's 29 minus 6, or 23. Yeah. And then the capital outflows, which is the gap between the two negatively sloped lines, I'm sorry, I guess I do usually put the outflows on the bottom and the inflows on the top, but I thought it'd be neater this time to do it this way. I got 29 minus 8, or 21. So we've got net capital inflows of 2. Here were total capital inflows, total capital outflows, 23 minus 21, 2. And then we also had a trade deficit of 2. Hey, this time it worked out. This time without the government intervention, the capital account and the current account were exactly the same size, opposite sign, and of course it's just that gap right there is all it is. All right, so that was hopefully an easy one. Then the last one, it's containing perspectives. Then the last one here was a tricky one, and it literally says, this is a bit tricky, but can you actually see on the graph the quantity of currency the government purchased? Now, which currency you said was up in 2.A, but now it's going to be down here. And let's see. I kind of need to erase everything. All right, let's do it. Hang on. Well, let's see if I can selectively erase here. And I'll just repair. If only I could put one of those little paint things on here and cause it to delete all the things of a certain color. Okay. All right, this won't take too much rebuilding. All right, that was D for dollars, U.S. exports. That was, it's still D for dollars, for pounds. Right there. Well, really, that's all I needed to do, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. A couple of ways to figure this out, and people used a number of different techniques. But really, the easiest one is you have to picture where the other curve is. Okay? That's the trick. The very first person's answers I read had nailed it exactly. I was like, oh my God, it picked it out exactly right. I guess I'll use red here since I was doing the C is red. There's a government line over here now. There's one that says D for dollars, exports, capital inflows, and I'll just put a G for government, right? Yeah, a G for government over there. And that's where the new line is, all right? So how can we tell how much they're buying? How much more than they were before? How much more than they were before? Okay, so they were originally buying nothing. It's this gap right here. It's just that gap, all right? They stepped in and bought 10, all right? Buying 10 pushed the furthest right curve, or changed the furthest right curve from being here to 10 further out to the right. All right, so they bought 10 to drive it down there. Now, I accepted answers other than 10, all right, because this was a very difficult one, and if I liked the way somebody was approaching it, it's like, okay, you got the wrong number, but you've got the idea, because it's tedious to figure it out. But okay, minus 0, all right, yeah, because I wanted to give you a break on that one. Let's see. So that's it. All right. Now, I'm very curious to see because I still don't know who made what grade, of course, and I'd like to see what the correlation is between the quizzes and the exams and so forth, and then that'll allow me to decide how to adjust going further on into the semester. But otherwise, that's it. Okay. I'm going to email you this too. Two things. One, no more AB, right? And I'm almost certain it's 1309. So if you want to come to class on Thursday, then I don't care what your name starts with. All right, you can come to class. But be sure to double check the schedule, because starting next week, it's Thursday is the day you don't go to class. But anyway, just check the schedule. Oh yeah, I wanted to double check to make sure it was 1309. And geez, now I can't remember if I already told you this on the introductory part. But oh, here we go. 1309. All right. But if I did, now you're hearing it twice. But there's something very important after this. It's on the bottom floor of what used to be Dan Rogers. I don't know if you knew where that was. The far east side of the campus, and it's not that hard to find. There's some sort of little cafe thing around the corner. It's a nice room, and I'm telling you, I was so happy to find this. It really makes the rest of the semester more fun. Also, I'm going to shift the time of the quizzes. I was really concerned that you had time to go from your 8 o'clock class, and probably, I'm sure not all of you has an 8 o'clock class, but from 9:20 to 9:30 to suddenly taking a quiz. And so I had made it 10:30. Well, now that we're this many weeks in the semester, I'm hoping you've kind of determined, a pattern and so forth, and I'm hoping you don't need that much time. So I'm thinking we're not going to do it at 10:30 anymore. It's going to be 10:15. Is that right? To 9:30. No, I'm sorry, 9:45. I was going to give you an extra 15 minutes. Anyway, I'll email it around to see. The reason being, we've got some complicated graphs coming up, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time on the quiz days to go over that. Hadn't been as important up to now. And it's all in the YouTube video still. But, hey, you also wanted to see live stuff, right? And so, and this new board, you can see the board on Zoom. All right, so that'll be really good. So I'll email that around, but we're moving the quiz time. 9:30. Yeah, 9:45 is what I was thinking. So that, okay, you might not have time to get home. But anyway, I'll email, and if there's any discussion about it, I'll let you know. But that's not until a week from tomorrow. That's going to be a week from Thursday. Otherwise, au revoir. See you tomorrow.